Hello everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So in this video we will go over lab 7D. Again, it has two questions. And the first question is kind of similar to one of the questions that we did in the previous lab. So let's get started. If we read the question, it says we're supposed to create a method. And if we look here, it's supposed to return an integer array. The name of the method should be add to file, and it should take a parameter of type string, and the name of it should be file name. So I think let's create that first. So create it before main. We're supposed to write public static. It should return integer array. The name of the method should be add add to file, and it should take a string object of name file name. So that's your method. Again, it expects you to return something, but don't worry about it. It will be written once we are done with the code. Now, what should this method do? It should ask the user to enter 10 more numbers, integers, to be added to the file. So this file that the user is giving you, the name of the file, you need to first ask the user to enter 10 numbers. And those 10 numbers you should add to this file, meaning you should append to it. So if there's data already in that file, you need to write these 10 numbers at the end of the file. It should write the data at the end of the file, like I just said, and it should return an array of the numbers entered. So this returns whatever number the user gave you, the array of numbers that the user gave you, you should return it back. Now, there is something that is highlighted in the notes. It says your method should check that the file exists. So you need to make this check. If the file name that the user has given you, if a corresponding file exists or not. If it does not exist, then you need to print out to the user that file does not exist. Okay, and then otherwise the test file add method is used by CodeRunner to check if your method performs all the actions properly. I don't think you need to know anything about this. It's just for CodeRunner to verify your code. So let's start with the first thing. We need to ask the user to enter 10 numbers and their integers. Yeah, so let's start with that. The first thing we require for this is the scanner object, obviously for reading from the user. Scanner input is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, now one more thing that we need to do we need for the user's input is to import the scanner class. So you click on add import, and then it adds that import for you. So we have the scanner. Now, before anything, I think what we should do basically is create this the integer array that we're supposed to use. So here I would create integer array, call it numbers is equal to new int array, and then give it a size of 10. Why 10? Because we need to take 10 numbers, right? So for that, the size should be 10. Now, I will also create a file. Okay, the first thing I should do basically here is to create a file object and see if the file exists or not. Because if the file does not exist, then I don't need to do all of these things. Like I don't need to ask the user to enter anything. I can just return from the method without doing anything. But if the file exists, then I need to continue with asking for input and writing to file. All right, so we have the scanner. Before that, we will create a file object. So file, I'll name it file is equal to new file name. Again, it's going to give me an error, add the import, and now it should be fine. So you have a file object. Now you can check if this file exists or not. So if file exists is going to be equal to false, then I should print out to the user something called, file does not exist. So I should print that out to the user. Okay. Now once I'm done with that, at the end, because I already have the integer array, I can write the return statement here, return numbers, and then this scanner object, I will put it in an else block. Okay, so yeah, now here, scanner input. Okay, now I have it in an else block. Now, if this means if the file exists. If the file exists, we need to start reading from the user. So I will just copy this prompt, and we will have a for loop to read from the user if index is equal to 0, index is less than uh, the numbers dot size. Oh, sorry, numbers dot length. When you have to learn different languages, that's the issue. Numbers dot length index plus index. Okay, and then one by one we read from the user. So you write your prompt, all right, and then whatever the user gives you, you store it in the numbers array. Numbers index input dot next int, because we're reading a number. All right, now we have that. What are we supposed to do next? It should be added to the file, and you should write to the end of the file. Now, in order to write to the end of the file, I think we can use the same loop, but in order to write to the end of the file, we need, or meaning if you want to append to a file, you should use file output stream. I would name it out stream equal to new file output stream, and you will pass the file object that you have along with true. Now this true indicates that you want to append. If you did not want to append to the file, you can just pass false. That's also valid. Now here again, I need to import it. So what I'll do basically, instead of having multiple imports, I can just write IO star. Okay, now this is going to throw an exception. In order to catch that, you can just write add throws clause, and it will add it here. So if I can show it to you again, let me remove it from here. The error will be here, and then if I click on this icon, add throws clause here, and then it adds it here. Now you have the file output stream. Now, because we want to write to the file, right? So we again need print stream. I would name it writer is equal to new print stream, but in this case you need to pass out stream and not the file object. Okay, and then normally you would just write writer dot print ln numbers of index, and that would add to the file. And finally, before returning, you can just close the writer. So writer dot close will close the writer. And finally it will return the number of the array, the numbers array. It's similar to the previous question that we've done. The only difference is we added the file output stream and then we checked for the existence of the file. Also the name of the method is different. All right, so I'll now copy this method and I will paste it in CodeRunner, and let's see what happens. Now here I can just paste the code that I've written. I will just indent it properly. Yeah. And let's see what happens. Let's click on pre-check. Okay, so the pre-check is fine. Let's click on check. Perfect. So that's also fine. In case the file does not exist, it's printing file does not exist. Otherwise, it's appending to the file. So that's question one. Now we'll move to question two. Before we start the second question, I want you to know that that question basically makes use of a text file, which you will find under the Unit 7 section on Moodle. Just go to Unit 7 Lab Resources Study Materials folder, and you will have the text files that you can use for the code. For the second question, we need to use salaries.txt. I'll click on it and I will download it and then show it to you how it's laid out. Now, in this question, if you notice, if in this text file, you notice carefully, you will see that there are two uh, values that are given to you. The first one is basically name, all right, and then there is a tab. I'm supposing there's a tab, and then there is some kind of a number. There's a name and there's a number, and between the name also there is a space. All right, the name can have 2 words, it can have 3 words, 3 words like it is here. So the number of words in a name are different, and they have spaces, and there's a tab that separates the name from some kind of a number, which we will look at now. So this is basically the structure of this text file. Now we look at what we need to do using this text file. So basically, this is the question that is there for question number 2. I've copied it here. It's a long one, but let's go over it. So it says the human resources department in a company wants to have a program which allows the user to add a percentage increase to the salaries of its employees. When using NetBeans, copy the file salaries.txt, the one that I just showed you, into the same folder as your project. In CodeRunner, the file is already in the same folder, so you don't have to do anything about it. The file data is okay. The data which is in that file that I just showed you is in DSV format. DSV is short for delimiter or delimiter separated values. Please evaluate the format of the file carefully. It contains values in the format name, tab, salary. So like I showed you, on one column you have name, there's a tab, and then the number that was there is to indicate the salary. So basically that's the salary of the person or the employee. Now what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to write a method which is void, which will not return anything, The name of it will be percentage increase. It should take two parameters. One is the file name, and the second one is a percentage or percent, in which is of the type double. Okay. Now let's do that first. So I'll just copy this whole thing so I don't have to write it out. And here I will write public static and then paste that here with brackets. All right, now I've done that. I've created the method. The method should basically open the file salaries.txt and read the names and salaries into two parallel arrays, meaning two arrays of the same size that are called parallel arrays, and they store data parallelly, meaning whatever data is stored on a particular index in one array, its corresponding data will be stored on the same index in another array. I'll show that to you in a minute. The second thing it should do is it should use the parameter a percentage increase given as a decimal figure to increase the salaries. It should write the new updated data back to the salaries.txt file, keep the same format. Nothing is printed on the screen. So you need to write that data back to the salaries.txt, but the updated data, meaning the increase that you give in the salaries, that you need to write it back to the text file. You don't need to print anything to the screen. There are some notes that are highlighted. Your method should check that the file exists and print an error message, file does not exist. Otherwise, it should, you can assume that there are less than 100 employees in the company. It is easier to use a scanner to read the full lines one at a time, then use another scanner with use delimiter to analyze each component of the line. And then the test file add, again, this is not something we should worry about. And this is the example. Basically, there's no result that gets printed. The only thing you need to do is write back to the file with the updated salaries, and that's it. It doesn't mention anything about appending to the file, so you can just overwrite whatever was there in salaries.txt. All right, so let's start it one step at a time. The first thing we should do is we should check if this file exists or not, the one we're going to deal with. The one we're supposed to read from and then write back to, we should check if the file exists or not. So I would write that first. I will create a file object. File is equal to new file, and then I will pass the file name that I get from the parameter, which is here. Now, again, I need to import, so I click here, and then I would select add import. Now I'm done with that. Now I need to check if this file exists or not. So if file dot exists is equal to false, then you should print out file does not exist. Okay. Now otherwise, what should we do? Let's look at that. You should open the file salaries.txt and read the names and salaries into two parallel arrays. So we know that we need the two parallel arrays, right? So for that, now one is name and the other is salary. So for name, we will use a string array because name is text. Names is equal to new string array. Now the problem is we need to mention what's the size. And for size, they've told us that we can assume that there are less than 100 employees in the company. So you can just add 100 as a size. Okay. Another array for storing the salaries. We know when we looked at the file, there was no decimal for salary. So you can just keep it as integer array. If you want to keep it as double, that's fine, up to you. Salaries is equal to new int array of 100. So we have the two parallel arrays. Can just put it here. Okay. Now we have the two parallel arrays. What should we do next? We need to read from the file. So for reading, we need a scanner, right? So you will create a scanner, input, or let's name it reader is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay, and then make sure you import the scanner. Now, wait, sorry, I made a mistake. It shouldn't have been system.in because we're not reading from the user, we're reading from the file. So we'll pass the file object. Now in this case, it will throw an exception. So you need to add it. So click on this button and then choose add throws and whatever is mentioned there. Now using a while loop, we check if reader dot has next. Then if it has next, then we need to read a whole line. So I would probably, um, okay, yeah, string line is equal to reader dot next line, right? Now, why am I using next line? Because it's given in the notes, right? It is easier to use a scanner to read the full lines at one time and then use another scanner with use delimiter with this setting to analyze each component. So I'll copy this and then I'll create another scanner. Scanner, let's call it words is equal to new scanner. And then I'll pass the line that I just read. All right. So this will create a scanner for me and it will actually read from this line that I've just read from the file. All right. And here we can write words words dot, or we can just write it here also, dot use delimiter. I can just paste it. So dot use delimiter, this quotation. What this basically does is in your file, the names are written this way. Let's say my name is Maliha Muzaffar, and then there's a tab, and then there is another, there are another a pair of quotations, and there's a random number, let's say. Now, this name, basically, the whole thing is surrounded with quotations, right? So I can say, get me whatever is there in quotations. So whenever you find a quotation, wherever it starts from and wherever it ends, whatever is there between it, just give me that. And then again, wherever you find a quotation, start from it, and wherever it ends, give me that. All right. So that's the only way, that's the only reason why we're using delimiter, as this one basically is like a way of representing double quotes, because if you don't put this bracket, this line, what happens is it doesn't know if you're actually writing it separately or you mean that you're writing a text with double quotes. So So you need to put that slash. Now here, here we have the words, right? Now we'll have a while loop. I don't think it is required, but let's see. We need the while loop, and then we would write words dot has next. If words dot has next, the reason why we're having a while loop is maybe because if there are more texts than we're expecting, then it will keep reading. The first thing is the name that we need to store, right? So names of, now the problem is you need to store it at a specific index, right? For that, you can create int index is equal to 0, and then here you can use index is equal to words dot next. So it will give you your word, your name, sorry. All right. Now the second thing in the the second thing in the file was the tab. So in order to skip the tab, you will write words dot next. This is for skipping tab. And then finally, for storing salaries, you will use the same index is equal to words dot next int, because salary, we've considered it as an int here. All right. So that will give you your values. And then finally, you can just write index plus plus so that it saves at different indexes. So that's basically reading and storing into two parallel arrays. Whatever name you have stored at, let's say, 0 index, the same person's salary, you would have stored it at 0 index in this array as well. That's the concept of parallel arrays. Now what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to increase the salaries by 20%, right? So again, we can loop through all the salaries in a, or you know what you can do, you can just add it here. Why to loop again? You can just write words dot next, and it should be 20% increment, not 20%, whatever percent increment is there. So this is the percent, right? So for that, you can just write words dot next int, and then plus words dot next int. What is the 20% of this? I'll just write it as int percent, if this works. Yeah. So this will add, so this is your salary already, and you will just add the 20% increment to your salary, and it will be stored in salary index. Sorry, in the array at that position or index. Now we've done that. We've incremented the salary. Now we have to write back to the file. Okay. So you have to, for writing, we need print stream, right? So print stream is equal to print, let's call it writer is equal to new print stream. And you're supposed to pass the file object, because in this case, they didn't tell us if we're supposed to append. So we'll just assume we're overwriting it. And again, you need to write it in the same format as it was written, right? So again, we will loop through it. We will go over Again, let's make in, okay, I think let's do it this way. Index is equal to 0. Now, why did I not write int? Because index already exists here. Your index should be less than names.length or salary.length, whichever one. And it should not be empty, meaning it should not have any default value. So names dot names of index should not equal to none, plus plus index. Now here we're supposed to write to the file one by one, the name and the salary. So you can write it this way: writer dot print ln. Okay, the first thing we need to put is the quotations. So you put the slash and then one quotation, that would mean a quotation. All right. You give it the name. So names of index. Again, you end it with a quotation. Okay. And then you need to also have a tab. So with the closing quotations, after the closing quotation, you need to have a tab. Tab, again, you write it this way: slash and t. Now, after the tab, again, you need to open the quotations, have your salaries of index, and then close the quotation. The same way how it was written in the file. And once you're done writing that, you can, once you're done with the loop, you can just close your writer.close. And I think that should be it for this question. So I'll just copy the whole method from here until wherever it ends. And I will paste it in CodeRunner and let's see what happens. So here I will paste the code. So this is the whole code. Let's click on pre-check to see if we're missing something. Okay, it says no such element. So one of the issues that, or one of the mistakes that I made was I wrote words next int twice. That means that the scanner would expect two numbers uh, when it's reading from the file. So in order to avoid that, I will just copy this, create int salary variable, save the salary there, and then I'll use the salary here in the calculation. Or you can just, try to use the formula that is the shorter one, the one that has, um, like you can have 1 plus the percent, like minimize the formula. I don't remember what's the word for it. But again, here I'll just use salary. And then one more mistake that I made here was I was converting percentage to int. So when the percentage was something like 0.2, when you change it to int, it just becomes 0. So this whole thing becomes 0 in itself. So I'll remove it from here and I will add it here. The reason we're adding int, or the reason we're casting, is because percentage is in double, right? So the whole thing will become double, and we don't want that because the array is the array salary is basically an integer array. So I think this should fix it, but let's see if we pre-check it. Okay, so it's showing that it's correct. And now if I click on check, again, it's correct. So that's how you would code your question 2 for lab 7D.